Hello everybody, welcome back to Out of Body. My name is Sabrina and today I'm going to be telling you my first out of body experience where I actually saw my grandparents who had passed away. If you want to hear more about this story, keep watching. So this experience happened about a year ago, and this was before I knew anything about astral projection. I had never heard of it. I never heard of anyone having an out of body experience during sleep. So when this happened, I wasn't sure what was going on, and after it happened, I kind of just assumed it was a dream, even though my mind kind of knew better. But I just thought this doesn't happen to anybody, so it must have been a dream. But now I know it wasn't. So to preface, I did mention that I did see my grandparents who had passed away. My grandma had passed away about a year and a half before I had this experience, and my grandpa had been passed away for, I want to say, about 8 years. I was really close to both of them. I didn't live close to them, but we would come and visit at least once or twice a year when I was growing up, and so I have really fond memories of them, and I was really emotionally close to them. So this experience was very significant to me. So as I was about to fall asleep, I felt kind of this lifting sensation, kind of like a floating sensation, like my essence was starting to float away. I knew it wasn't my physical body. My physical body was still in bed, but I could feel, as if my spirit was starting to kind of lift and float away. And so I immediately opened my eyes and I was still in bed in my body, and I was like, what the heck is going on? I was a little bit freaked out, but it felt good, if that makes sense. The floating sensation, I mean, it felt nice, like when you're floating in water, it feels relaxing. It felt kind of nice. I closed my eyes and I was like, okay, let me see if it happens again. And then it did. It started to happen again. And in that moment, somehow I realized in my mind that I had a choice. I could let it happen. I could let my essence or my spirit or whatever you want to call it float away somewhere, or I could stop it. In my mind, I could say no, and not let it happen. I felt as if someone was kind of summoning me. I know it sounds strange, but as I tell you the story, it'll make sense. I felt like someone was kind of pulling at me, and it didn't feel bad. It didn't feel scary. So it didn't feel like anything dark or anything like that. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I'll have any recollection of what's going to happen after this, but I'm just going to let it happen. So I did. So I felt my essence actually kind of float up above my bed in my room and just kind of float away. After that, everything was just dark for a little bit. I couldn't see anything. I do also want to note that I had had this floating sensation before. Actually, ever since I can remember, when I was really little, I used to have that kind of sensation before I fell asleep. Almost every night, I would feel like I was floating around in my room. I was too scared to open my eyes and see what was really happening. So, I mean, I could have been out of the body even then. I don't know. But, and I used to also feel the vibrations, like the buzzingness before I would fall asleep. And I would get scared in the moment. I'd be like, what is that? What is this buzzing thing all around me? And I would just freeze because I was so scared. And I would just sit there and wait for the vibrations to leave. And eventually they did dissipate and leave, and then I'd go to sleep. So I just want to add that in here, that I had felt this floating sensation before when I was a kid, and I thought about that in the moment. I was like, man, I haven't felt this in years. It's nice. So the next thing that happens, I start to see, I'm in this darkness for a while, and I'm just kind of floating or whatever. And all of a sudden, I start to see a little bit of a light. It's kind of like what a lot of people describe when they have a near-death experience. They describe seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel. So I start to see this light kind of coming in right directly in front of me, and it starts to get a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, as if I'm moving forward. I couldn't really tell if I was moving forward or not. I just felt like I was stagnant, but I must have been moving forward or being brought forward. Eventually, the light gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and I can start to see shapes and things. The first thing I start to see is grass, actually. So I know that there's blackness behind me and around me, and there's like this circle of light in front of me, black around it. So I'm coming out of this tunnel, and I see grass, and I see trees, and I just see sky and just bright light. My eyes had to really adjust. And I see this woman running towards me. At first, she kind of just looks like a glow of a shape. So she's coming towards me, running towards me. And I start to see that she's wearing kind of like a horizontal striped shirt, like peach and white, kind of little stripes all around her shirt, and like, I want to say like capri khakis or something like that. She's just running towards me like a crazy woman or something is what I think. And I'm just like, who is this woman running towards me? Like, what is going on? I'm not scared or anything. I mean, she's not scary, but I'm just like, who is this? And I'm just kind of, I come through the tunnel, and as soon as I get through it, this woman is embracing me. And in that instant, I realize who she was. She was actually my grandmother who had passed away about a year and a half before. So at that point, I'm really excited. I mean, I'm overjoyed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how is this possible? How am I seeing you right now? And she just seemed so happy too, and so overjoyed. And the next thing I know is she's kind of guiding me around the corner to the right. She's kind of just saying, hey, let's come this way, you know. So she guides me over to the right, and there's this big kind of two-story older house. Not Victorian style, not quite that old, but maybe something that was built like in the 1940s. But it's this two-story house. I want to say it's brick or something. It was kind of a dark reddish color, and it had a front porch, and there was a huge crowd of people walking into this house. So I'm just kind of standing there watching these people walk in, and I noticed something kind of peculiar about them. Some of them actually had wings. And what's weird about it is the people that had wings, their wings were black, which sounds weird, but I'm just telling you exactly what I remember. So they had these black wings, and they didn't seem like sad. Like they were all going into this house, and they kind of seemed like they needed help or something. Like they were going to get help with something. Like they were struggling and they were going to get help. I don't know, something like that. So I'm looking at these people, and then I spot someone I recognize. I spot my grandpa. And my grandma, during this whole thing, she's still like right beside me somewhere. I can tell she's there, but she's not saying anything. So I see my grandpa, and he sees me too. So I go right beside him, and I'm looking up at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's you. And he looks down at me, and he's not like mean or anything, but he's kind of serious. So anyway, he looks down at me, and he acknowledges me. So he knows who I am, but he was then talking with someone beside him. So he acknowledges me, and then he looks over and keeps talking with the person next to him, and he keeps walking, and I walk with him. And I was kind of confused in that moment. I was like, what? You know, my grandma was so happy to see me. You know why? It's not that he wasn't happy. It'll make sense as I describe what happened next. So next, I go into the house with all of these people. It's weird because once I get in the house, it doesn't look like a house anymore. It looks almost like a big warehouse, if that makes sense. It's huge on the inside. There's this huge, like, big rectangular room. And there's people everywhere, and there's different tables with people gathered around them. And so I follow my grandpa to the table he was going to, and there's just people everywhere, and they're actually having fun. It seemed like it was helping them to let go of something, if that makes sense. Maybe to let go of something that happened in their earthly life. I don't really know. So I follow him over there, and there's these people kind of lined up. When he got up to the front of the line, and he's on one side of this table, so the table's like right here. It's just a rectangular table, and he's on this side of the table, and I'm also on the side beside him, and I'm watching. I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen? There's like this big machinery around, like behind him and around us, and he starts, this is weird, I know, he starts picking up this big machinery and throwing it, like letting out his anger, almost, is how it came across to me. Anyway, so he's like throwing the stuff across the room as if he's like letting out some kind of anger, like letting go of something, and he seems really happy at that point. Then I see him smile, he seems really happy and excited. I'm like, okay, this is weird, but if it's making him happy, fine, you know, I guess it's like letting out anger or something. And so I start to look around the room, and I see other stations, other tables of people doing the same thing. And they're all happy, they're all excited, like they're finally letting all this stuff go. This is where it ends. This is all I remember anyway. I don't remember coming back to my body or anything after that. It could be because it was my first experience. You know, when you first start to astral project, when you come back to your body, you usually don't remember the whole experience. You usually remember bits and pieces. And as you practice it more, you remember more. But this is where my memory ends on this. And maybe that's how it was supposed to be. I don't know. But that's where it ends. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good experience and it was wonderful, and that's all I remember. And I wake up the next morning and I remember it all, and I'm like, was that a dream? You know, and I kind of thought it was, but then I was like, wait a minute, I remember floating away from my body before I fell asleep. So was it a dream? You know, did I really see them? And keep in mind, like, this is another thing that, you know, makes me feel that it was real, a real out of body experience, is that I don't normally dream about dead relatives. I don't ever. Some other people in my family have said that they have dreams, you know, about some of our relatives that have passed away. I never do. I've never dreamed about my grandpa. I never dreamed about my grandma before this point. So that is my story, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. So in next week's video, I will be talking about another out-of-body experience I had earlier this year, where I actually believe that I went to another Earth, or another planet that is a lot like Earth, where there were people there, but there was something a little bit different about them. And I will talk about that in my next video, so if you'd like to hear more about that, stay tuned. And if you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye!